Hello YouTube, this is Dakota from Bowtied Media, and today we are doing a brand new installment of Hot Takes, where I go and ask about your hot takes and your crazy thoughts on stuff. And this video in particular is specifically talking about the worst ofs list. I had two worst of lists in 2024 that I had the worst albums / EPs of the year and worst songs of the year. And this time I came on and asked about that in particular, and you guys had some opinions of songs you think maybe should have also been on the list. Maybe I was a little wrong, so let's get into it. Brat should have been on the worst. No, this is rage bait. This is rage bait. I get if you don't understand it, but to think it's worst, that's crazy. If you think Brat is like the worst album of the year, one of the worst albums of the year, you need to reevaluate your listening habits. I honestly, I think it's objectively a really, really strong album, and I am not the minority opinion on that. So I know this is rage bait, but if you really think that, get yourself checked. I think the Kashmir Country Roads remake is straight heat, an example of how to put a different personal spin on a song from a different genre. The likes of Guetta, Timmy Trumpet, and DVLM should take some notes. What about the Country Roads remake or cover is what did you say? A personal spin, a different personal spin on a song from a different genre. How is that any different from what David Guetta and Timmy Trumpet are doing? They're also putting a different personal spin, and all of them don't sound good. And Kashmir's different personal spin, he does this other leaning dance pop commercialized style of stuff that is this is so not even Kashmir's style. So why is he making Country Road Take Me Home? This doesn't make sense to me at all. This take is, I don't get it. Two Times by Dimitri Vegas and Steve Aoki should have been in the top 3 worst songs, honestly. Not only is it a boring and uninspired slob of a remake to get through, aside from the 8-bar section in the extended mix that was somewhat decent, but there was information that came out recently that it was technically a stolen song from a smaller producer by the name of Will Atkinson, who wasn't allowed to release his version until 2 months after the DV Aoki version was released due to industry politics. What makes it worse is the fact that the Will Atkinson version sounds somewhat better, while the DV Aoki version with more producers on it stripped whatever personality was left from it. If that's true, and I don't know, because I'm seeing this for the first time, that's crazy to me. That's wild, if it was a stolen song. And I think obviously that does come into account when I think of things, because Man in Finance is a lot of that was number one because of it had the different versions, and it was just a trend hop kind of thing. And so that would have landed maybe on the list if I knew that information. But I also just don't think it's the worst song from Steve Aoki and Dimitri Vegas that year. If I would have known that, maybe it lands a 10, 9, 8 spot. But even then, it's not a terrible song. It is bad, but it's not bad like my other list was. But that is very interesting if that is true about that, though. I think Know Me Better is actually pretty good. Hey, and you know what? You can think that. You can think that. Honestly, I'm not being sarcastic. You can like the songs. If you come out of those videos thinking that you're not allowed to like a song that I've said is bad, I think I've done a bad job of actually explaining what the purpose of those lists are, / just not vocalizing what I mean in my opinions, because I think it's very okay to like bad songs. I like songs that I think are objectively bad. There is a certain song, I don't know why it's this song that always comes to my head. The end of the Jonas Brothers, The album, there is a song with John Bellion called Walls. And I listened to it for the first time, and I'm like, oh my goodness, this song is a horrible version of this grand feeling that I love. I'm suckered into these kind of grand tracks that have these big, climactic, operatic moments. And I was like, man, this is just a derivative version of all of that. And yet, I still really like listening to it because of the structure of it, the structure itself. And so that's a guilty pleasure of mine. And you can Know Me Better. You can think it's a good song. Everyone is entitled to their own opinion. The song has streamed decently well, and it exists because people enjoy listening to it. I am personally not one of those people. I think personally it's a bad song. I think objectively it's also fairly bad, Know Me Better. But yeah, again, you're entitled to your own opinion. Never Going Home Tonight by Miles is the worst song by both Guetta and Alesso. Interpolating Guru Josh's Infinity, they certainly wanted to recreate Summertime Sadness, meeting If I Lose Myself, aka the festival of progressive house songs that make you cry. And yes, there was a huge rumor spreading that Lana Del Rey almost became the vocalist, but I guess her team rejected it in the end. Yes, I heard rumblings of that as well too, the rumor of Lana Del Rey, because man, that song was meant for Lana Del Rey. And I actually have a theory about the song that because the vocalist is Madison, something I can't remember off the top of my head, but it's like her only song on Spotify. So my mini theory is that they had her just sing the version like Lana Del Rey would, and then they pitched it to Lana Del Rey and said, hey, like, we want your vocals on this. This woman just sang as like the vocal to get your inflection and all this kind of stuff. And then her team said no, because it's a bad song. And then they just went with it. And they were like, great, she's our vocalist, Madison here. That's my general, like, my actual hot take / mind thought, my personal canon on what happened to that song. That song also terrible. That one was close to landing on the list. It's just trying to be too many things at once, and it was terrible. But I mean, if I had to have a David Guetta song on there, and there typically always is, it had to be Man in Finance. That thing was it was way worse. CYRIL's remix of Disturbed, The Sound of Silence should have made the worst list for this year for sure. Takes all the power and soul the original had and replaces it with repetitive loop and some synths here and there. In my opinion, it should have taken the place of Know Me Better, which is pretty bad, especially the lyrics, but not near the worst for me. The repetitive production there is at least slightly better than CYRIL's popular stuff this year. Yeah, this one is one that I didn't really have on my radar a ton. I think I heard it once, and then when I saw this hot take, I quickly went and listened to it. Man, it is bad. I specifically remember listening to it, and at first, because I don't listen to a ton of Disturbed, and so I think when I was making the lists, I saw that like Disturbed was obviously, this is like a remix cover song, and I was like, oh, I don't really know enough about the original band to really have a well-formulated opinion and feel like I had some real skin in the game here, and so I think that's why I stayed away from it. But man, that song sucks. Like, that's pretty bad. You're absolutely on point about how it just sucked all the life out of the original. Oh man, that's probably one of the, I honestly, maybe if I would have retrospectively gone back and done it, I might have added that song on the list now. That is like, it is pretty quintessentially like like EDM trying to make a cover or / remix of something and just failing so hard. That was trash. I'll be honest, Riot Ten's latest EP isn't that bad. In fact, it is adequately enjoyable. Only song audibly disliked was the Shake That Ass track, but everything else was just dumb fun, like dubstep, but Con Air Cameron Poe style. I love comparing Riot 10 to a Nicolas Cage film. That is quite perfect, actually, more than anything. I think that really does a great job of declaring what the album's like. But no, the Riot 10, it's bad. I think you can do the kind of fun in an enjoyable, high-quality way and still make it sort of like messy and rough around the edges, but Riot 10 just didn't do that. And I think the seriousness of the album is, I think he was really trying to take the album seriously, and that's why it landed the way it did, because I mean, Bounce That, which I learned after the fact, Bounce That was like pretty much just an actual carbon copy of, I can't remember who it was, someone's feature on a Drake album from one of his records, and it sounds like the exact same. And my goodness, if that wasn't a clear sign that they were just trying to land commercial success with that one and just trying to seriously copy something else, oh man, if I would have known that before, I might have put that higher on the list. But the Riot 10, yeah, I may not be making friends by saying this, but man, it was bad. Mr. Bill's Mechanomorphic album easily makes the worst 5 albums of the year. Though it's unique, I'll give it that. The album was way too messy and came off as super directionless, with each song accomplishing pretty much nothing. One of the worst projects ever to be signed to Monster Cat. That is a hot take, sir. Oh my goodness. The worst projects ever. Whew, I question what you listen to objectively, or just listen to at that point, because I think objectively it's a great album, and I think there's lots to really to take away from it. And I mean, yeah, it's sporadic, but that's kind of its whole thing. Like, I think there's a difference between like a messy album that's messy unintentionally and an album that's a little bit more all over the place and kind of intentionally messy. And I think Mechanomorphic is that. Like, you can even tell by the album art of just how much is going on. And I think you'd be crazy to not at least get something out of some of those songs. Maybe you just don't like that more experimental dubstep bass house leaning style, but there's like, how do you hate that worst 5 all time? Like, that's wild. That's crazy. If only one Timmy Trumpet song was going to be on the worst list, it really should have been Boom Boom Boom. It has all the negative elements of his other hardstyle tracks, plus the worst lyrics I've ever had to sit through. I can't even think of those lyrics without cringing. Yeah, that's fair. When it comes to artists kind of like David Guetta and Timmy Trumpet, in full honesty and disclosure, I have a lot I can pick from. There is a lot that I can choose. I do limit myself to 1 per artist on these lists, and I think just for me, classical music, more so than not, represented holistically the year of suck for Timmy Trumpet. What he was going for and why he was going for it, and sort of missing all those marks. And I think over something like a Boom Boom Boom, classical music just fully encompasses everything that Timmy Trumpet tried to do in 2024 and everything, all the marks that he missed along the way. And so that's why I think that one landed on the list for me. I think sometimes, just as a little like inside of my brain here, songs make the list, I think, more so holistically because of them kind of representing more than just a song. Similar to how Dave and Guetta, Man and Finest represented covers and trend hopping and quick songs and different versions. It represented more than just what the song was in a vacuum. Similar to, on the other end of things, I think Porter Robinson's Cheerleader, it did a better job of encompassing the whole album of Smile than I think like a Russian Roulette or Easier to Love You would. And so I think that's a little tidbit into why I pick some of the songs I do. I'm surprised Bounce That didn't make it to the worst songs list. The whole song is a joke and should have never been signed to Monster Cat. Yes, I mentioned it a little bit earlier about how terrible Bounce That was, and I agree. In retrospect, honestly, realizing the terrible cover thing, I say this, and I actually don't say this lightly. I am also genuinely surprised that got signed through Monster Cat. No one throughout any of the vetting process said, hey, like, I know it's a Drake song, but like, they're like, hey, this is like a carbon copy of another verse from a Drake song just on like a trap cut from Riot 10. And the fact that that didn't raise any eyebrows, I think, is slightly concerning for me. I don't know if they're just giving artists full creative freedom there. I don't know if they did recognize that and go, hey, oh, like this is supposed to be an homage to that, which I don't think it was. Though, genuinely, and maybe this is a hot take, maybe I'll get some flack for this, I also don't think the song should have been signed. I don't think that's Monster Cat's MO anymore. I don't think this song feels like a regression in quality, even checks and quality assurance from Monster Cat. COD Dubz not making the worst list, but Riot 10 making it makes no sense to me. We're talking a lot about Riot 10 today. I feel like everything people say about Riot 10 applies to COD Dubz even more, especially when comparing their 2 EPs on Monster Cat this year. In full transparency and in full honesty, COD Dubz Canal Street Crook would have been my number 11. It would have been my number 11 one for the year. But I think in the end, I think Bounce That is what took it higher on the list and landed it on the list over the COD Dubz one. Both, I think, represent this idea of Monster Cat's just putting out just this style of abrasive kind of rhythm, dubstep, brostep style that doesn't really resonate with the core Monster Cat audience, which I recognize has dwindled a fair amount from its glory days. But it just is a clear turn in direction and Monster Cat really acknowledging that the label is different. The label's objectives, what they're doing, it's different. And that shows in the fact that the Riot 10 EP in particular, I'm not actually sure about the COD Dubz, but did well streaming-wise. Did fairly well streaming-wise numbers. And so it's a lot less about, I think, honestly, if I were to be quite honest, again, if I'm going to get lots of flack for this video by the Monster Cat fans, I think it's just a recognition that the quality just, I don't think is there from Monster Cat, at least in as abundant as it had been in the past. when it comes to music and when it comes to art forms, there's obviously always going to be your peaks, there's always going to be your lows, and it's always everyone's opinion in between. And so I just think the amount of lows that we saw this year was honestly, and if I'll be again frank, a little worrying for Monster Cat this year for me personally. So if anything, that might be my just hottest take, is that I really actually was a little disappointed in Monster Cat's year when I looked back at the whole thing retrospectively. But that's been the hot takes of the worst list for 2024. What did you think? I feel like the comment sections are going to be a little spicy on this one, and the Discord chatter will be not in my favor sometimes. And I know some of you don't like these worst lists, but quite frankly, and I will honestly say, I do think, as someone that would claim to be at least somewhat of a music critic, of someone that at least talks about music critically, as much as we talk about the best, I think we have to talk about the worst. I really do. I quite honestly do. I think it's a way to not quality control, because obviously people aren't going, oh, Bowtied said this is bad, so we're not going to make that. That's not at all what I'm saying. But the recognition of, it's an art form, and with all art forms comes an area of critique. And quite frankly, I think it's up to the artists if they want to choose to go and seek out that critical either reception and or thoughts on certain things. And if they don't want to, that's great. They don't have to. I do think it's wrong when artists go though and not when fans go and say, like, message artists and say, like, oh, this album is like very terrible, you shouldn't have made this song's trash. That's bad. That's really bad. Don't be doing that. But if you're posting them on like kind of public forums of sorts, and you're not like adding them or anything, and you're just giving your opinion, as long as it's at least at somewhat critical or at least productive feedback to some extent, and giving real, honest, genuine thoughts other than this is bad because I don't like it, then I think it's fine. But I'm very curious to see what you guys think of this episode of Hot Takes. But with that, I'm Dakota from Bowtied Media, and I will see you guys in another video.